This meeting is being recorded.
What was that? We okay now? All right. So I'll start by inviting us to share a moment of tender intimacy that's always available to us. And that begins by taking a breath. Letting that breath, watching and allowing that breath to flow in, just inviting it in and flowing out. And not just randomly, okay, I'll take a breath, oh, there's the breath, but we're gonna set up an intimate scene here. We have a body that's breathing. We have an awareness that's shining its light down on the circling waves of the breath. So we have this very beautiful little intimate forest pool, perhaps, or something, and the waves are moving out. We drop the stone of our awareness into the water or our concentration, and the ripples move out, and everything flows back in. So we're opening up this intimate relationship. We're not just saying, again, we're not taking the breath as something technical, but we're realizing, oh, in this moment, I can bring my loving attention, my grateful attention, my intimate attention to the simple process of expanding and relaxing. And in that moment, this wonderful coherence develops, right, through my body, my breath, my awareness. And it's very powerful, and it might bring you a moment's sweetness, but there's also whatever is happening in the heart can be a part of it. If there's sadness, you can just bring a delicious sadness into that sweet opening of the breath and relaxing of the breath. Don't have that sadness be an outlier. Have it be part of the team, of your awareness, of your heart, of your breath, of your body, for example. If there's anger, you could do that too, but only if it agrees to be part of the team, you see. Then it becomes a player. And then even anger becomes part of our coherence rather than the thing that's making me incoherent. And again, that's inviting my capacity for the interoception. I'm not just noting it from the outside, but I'm entering into my awareness into the openness and the relaxation of the breath. So I'm just going to just read and review the very little bit we've actually read so far. And then I want to leave a space also, as I said I would, in case there's anything that's been coming up that anybody would like to share or respond to or ask questions about. And then we'll go in deeper to the next step. The Tao is basically utterly open. Utter openness has no substance. It ends in endlessness, begins in beginninglessness. When openness culminates, it transforms into spirit. And spirit changes to produce energy. And energy masses into form, and then the one divides into two. Now, with duality, there is a sensing. Something can sense something. And with sensing, there is a pairing of yin and yang in mutual interaction. The creative and the receptive establish their positions. Movement and stillness alternate unceasingly. Creativity, receptivity, vitality, and spirit interdepend. The active and the passive take over from one another. At this point, creativity, receptivity, desire, awareness, movement, stillness, attraction, and accord connect with the operation of essence, sense, spirit, vitality, and will, so that there is a consistency that establishes the season of the life cycle. We'll be going back each time. There's more and more on this to begin to uncover. A harmonious process of distillation sustains origination and production. In heaven, it distributes the various forms, and on earth, it nurtures all living beings. We did invite a couple of things to think about during the week. We talked about openness the first week, and to imagine or to practice, to exercise what it means to look at something with the openness of not projecting our idea onto it, even our label or name. We'll come back to that again too. And then also, in the second longer paragraph, when it talks about the way of things, the alternation of the life cycle, the interdependence of things, to give yourself a chance perhaps to notice in your everyday life or in the cycles of your life how that works. That might also be worth doing. So before I go speaking some more about these things, I just want to hold open some space to see if there are any direction of responding or questioning or reports or anything like that. It's okay if there isn't. Megan.
I'm wondering if you can pull apart. I'm getting stuck on two words. My mind is like trying to understand essence and spirit.
Yeah, I don't blame you.
Not necessarily what is the difference between, but like,
Yeah. Okay.
what is even meant by.
Excuse me, still having that tickle. Yeah, words are tricky. And those words are especially tricky because words turn things into things, right? And those are things that are kind of suggesting are not things. They're beyond the tendency to create things. Essence is a kind of, and so we have to also understand that words are kind of arbitrary. Different systems will use different words for the same thing, and pretty much all systems agree. They kind of hold their nose and do it because we have to do it. We have to. So you know what we're referring to, and that's why this is the famous Buddhist expression. If I'm pointing to the moon, look at the moon, not the finger pointing to the moon. So a word like essence, all these words are fingers pointing. They're right. They're trying but you have to let go of the word. But essence um, is again. What's another word he uses here? Well, I mean, essence can mean the essential openness. It can mean emptiness. It can mean that which is the most essential. The most essential. But what's most essential isn't an essence. Okay? So you have to understand how it's using that word. So when we talk about the essential, it's like what's left when everything else falls away. That's what's essential. And it's nothing. It's not a thing. Okay. But we learn it has an atom it has uh I hate it. I'm back to words again. I say characteristics. It has a nature. It has a dynamic. It has a vitality. So what we're learning, the whole paradox of emptiness and form, is that emptiness by nature, because of its complete openness, because it can't be bounded in any way, it's therefore not can't be other than anything, including anything. So emptiness is form, and emptiness is arising, and yet never ceases to be empty, which is why form is empty. Even emptiness is form, and then you can say, all right, well, that's just a lot of talk. What does it mean? Ultimately, what it most means is we can relax, because the hard lines that we put on things, the things we attribute to things and make stories about and rate our life based on, which can work sometimes, but we can get stuck because we're making often very arbitrary assignments of things based on a very narrow breadth of experience, and then we're stuck there, and that's basically the story of our lives to one extent or another. Uh, it's saying do that lightly, right? Do it, make use of that, but don't let it uh, limit or define your understanding of reality, which is actually open. And therefore you can relax and approach. And then really what the Taoism is about is, given this paradox, how do we approach things with balance and harmony? How do we approach things with that openness of being, rather than all the ways we get driven because we're identified with our projections of reality? Okay. So that's essence. And spirit is a word used differently in different systems, and I think I mentioned actually last week or the last session we had that was a word that was sometimes troubling to me, but that what I think spirit really refers to is that aspect of our awareness which is open awareness rather than confined awareness. It's the spirit, it's the awareness presence in our own awareness. It's we can even say it's that's the underlying awakeness or capacity for awakeness that's always there, and always there resting within our own awareness. And I mentioned that actually the word spirit is used in Taoist and in Chinese medicine when they talk about, and in Qigong, when they talk about the different aspects of qi, the jing, the qi, and the shen. And the shen is often translated as spirit, and it really refers to our open awareness. So that we have that capacity, that invested open awareness. That's also it's identified with the upper dantian, but also is spoken of as resting at the heart. So, if that makes you comfortable with both those words, I think that's not inconsistent with what their meanings are. Yeah.
Hey, Paul.
Yeah.
This is Chris. I'm blacked out because
Oh.
I'm in a dark car. So
Oh. Okay. Oh, thank you for breaking in. Yeah.
Could you kind of say that in the practice of silent illumination that essence is kind of the silence part and spirit is the illumination part.
That the essence is the silent part and the spirit is the illumination part?
Yeah, because the
That's
illumination means
that's
you have,
beautiful. That's
yeah,
beautiful. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Oh, so great to have you on, Chris. Yeah. Okay. In the basic practice in Zen, a very basic Zen school, it's called silent illumination. We've talked about that before, and it's really it's a practice, but it's really, as Chris is suggesting, stating it is in itself the essence of things, becoming one with that. Illumination means that our awareness is simply illuminating whatever is arising in awareness, illuminating things as they are, as they arise. And silent means the mind is not adding anything to it. It's not adding judgment. It's not adding reaction. It's not adding labeling. The mind is silent and non-reactive. It's just simple illuminating awareness. So in that school of Zen, really our whole sitting practice is simply about learning to sit in silent illumination, which means, and again, other schools of practice have different similar words, like in the Vajrayana, they'll sometimes call it resting in the nature of mind, right? Which means you're not trying to do anything special, but you're not adding anything, just to the nature of what is arising and being illuminated in awareness moment to moment. So yes, so that illumination, that aware being is we could call it the spirit. And you might say the openness or the emptiness of non-response, allowing everything to be what it is resting at the essence, not adding anything to it. Does that
yeah,
sound right to you, Chris? Yeah.
yeah. And then I had a question, wanted you to clarify one of the things that when you were reading
Yeah.
the writing, and you were saying about form and emptiness alternating, and I got a little stuck on the word alternating, and I
Right.
wanted to know if you wanted to
Yeah.
clarify that a little more.
Alternate. Yeah. Well, it says movement and stillness alternate
More
unceasingly.
movement and stillness alternate.
Yeah. Entire receptive establish this. I think what it's, I think it's saying when it says the creative and the receptive, the yin and the yang, there's an active and a receptive. The movement represents activity, and the stillness represents that receptivity, or the yin.
Yeah. I was just getting a little bit caught on the definition of alternating that says this,
Yeah.
then that, then this, then that, and it's like
Right. Yeah.
it's like
I think if
image.
you think of it more as to embracing possums flowing downstream and just having fun in the water.
Okay.
It's not. Yeah. I mean, the thing is, all these words, because we have so much mechanical association with them, right? And causal associations and linear. So I think it's just saying there's a natural balance and harmony between the two. There's a give and a take. There's an ebb and a flow, and that's just built in to the flow, because it's part of the expression of this of yin and yang, which is simply the play of opposites that allows a form or creation to emerge rather than simply empty openness. That inherent in that empty openness is this dynamic play, and therefore form can arise. I think, and it's also what it's suggesting is, again, one of the places where we get stuck is when we are blocked in one place or the other, where we're blocked in terms of movement or we're blocked in terms of stillness, where we've developed rather than relaxing and allowing that play of both. Like there are certain things that we'll grab onto and won't let go of, or there are certain things we won't relax and open to. So, so he's giving us a formula for relaxing and the natural unfolding of things, and he says that in several ways. And actually, I do want to give a couple of examples of that this evening. Um, See, and then he says, I love it how he ends it. He says, stillness, movement, stillness, uh, creativity, receptivity, accord, attraction, essence, spirit, vitality. It says, so there is a consistency that establishes the season of the life cycle. And I think we can understand life cycle both in terms of just the ongoing cycle of life, but also in our own life cycle. To begin to understand something about that is to have some wisdom about our own life cycle. And so that we can begin to have wisdom that helps us to live our lives out more and more in accord with the nature of things, in harmony and balance. Because, of course, the nature of the ego is going to develop its own agenda and perspective and point of view that is trying to hold and alter and grab after or push away the reality in order to hold on to some idea of what it thinks it needs or how it thinks things should be. And that creates a lot of imbalance and suffering. In fact, I wanted to mention this evening that whole idea. Let me see what was a particular word he used here. Oh, right. Okay, well, yeah, so the whole idea of being in accord with the nature of things is in a Taoist way of really saying something that the Buddhism is saying in the Four Noble Truths, or the nature of suffering. That, if Buddhist had been a Taoist, he might say, well, we suffer because we're not in accord with the nature of things. His term for suffering, of course, is dukkha, which we'll come back to. And the second noble truth is often translated as, we're suffering because of desire, which is really misleading. What it's really meaning is it's not desire, it's the tendency to want to have to make things be the way we think we need them to be, based on a separate sense of self that has this need and demand to create, from a self-centered point of view. And that's going to lead to suffering because that separate self is not in accord with the nature of things. So interestingly, I was really fascinated, delighted to read one scholar talking about the etymology of the words dukkha and sukha. Right? Sukha is happiness and dukkha is suffering. And su and du, su is good and du is bad. Okay, so ka, which is the term apparently in Sanskrit that refers to emptiness and also to a hole, an open space like that. And he traced it back etymologically to the Aryan, to an axle hole. Okay, so you have an axle hole in a wheel in a chariot. The Aryans had wooden chariots, and a good axle hole was a hole that was at the center. Because if your axle hole is at the center, it's going to give you a smooth ride. Right? But if your axle hole is off center, it's going to give you a really bumpy ride, especially on a wooden wheel. So the ego is like a hole that's off center because it's presuming to be the center, and it can't be. Therefore, in terms of the balance of life, it's off center. In fact, being is the center. Right? So it's saying we have to relax this off-centered point of view, which is creating a really bumpy ride, suffering, and to begin to open up to a situation, a point of view or an understanding or an awakening, where something much more fundamental than our constructed sense of self is at the center of all of this, and which is essence. Yeah, good. Yeah, keep it coming, Chris. That's really nice. Anybody else? Megan, I've kept you on the screen all this time. We'll say goodbye for a moment. Yeah, Phoebe.
Yeah, so my understanding of all these things is small. I like, and I think maybe this is just me, to add a movement or a life or an experiential part of that. So when you talk about these concepts, instead of alternating, I hear that or feel that as one turns into the other, which turns back again. So the one is contained within the other.
Hmm.
And I find that kind of dynamic easier for me to relate to, but then I feel like I'm just putting my own construct.
No,
Uh,
no, absolutely. That's also true. And in fact, again, the the yin yang, the Tao,
mhm.
the Dai Chai Chi, which is actually that form, shows that they're not only alternating, but they each contain the other.
Oh, so
So, and one of the ways they talk about it is that each thing is coming into its fullness. As it comes into its fullness, it becomes the other, paradoxically, right? Because they're all in a process of dancing and becoming, right? So it's like the wheel goes over the top. It's coming.
mhm.
Completing, and now it becomes the other coming down. So they're all there, and as a basic principle anyway, as and all these words like interdepend and words like interbeing, the understanding that just as we have to relax our dualistic idea of form and emptiness, we really have to relax our dualistic idea of everything. That there is a that in a sense, the idea that anything could possibly, in some sense, not be the same as everything else is kind of a dualistic. Each thing is individual, and yet it's not individual by nature of being other.
Mhm.
It's an expression on another level, and there are a lot of teachings that really uh, go into that in great detail in Buddhist schools as well as Taoist. Yeah, yeah. So that gives us again more and more appreciation, of inclusiveness and of intimacy and of balance and harmony. Right. So are these underlying, we might say, virtues are simply natural understandings or pictures of the fundamental nature of reality itself. So so yes, you're right. You're right at the heart of things.
Well, it's one reason why I really appreciated you giving us an assignment, which is the mantra soften into everything.
Yeah.
But I enjoy when I feel that some of these concepts are actually experiential.
Yes.
And
Right.
it isn't just a word that says this and this process is happening at somewhere that I'm grasping with my mind, but rather I'm living it, I guess, in that
Right.
sense.
Thank you for mentioning that particular mantra again. I forgot that I had given you it in that form.
Yes, you
Soften
have.
into everything. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's true. It's so easy. I could go on talking and talking, obviously, about all these things, but I'd much rather have you help to slow me down and share your experiences and, keep it experiential as we go. Thank you. Okay. Please chime in anytime you want to. Okay, so I want to look at these last statements as a whole again and talk a little more about them. First, this whole idea again of establishing the seasons of the life cycle, and I would tie that in with another thing that comes up later that I've read to you before. It says, when openness is complete and calmness profound, then observe the process of nature and know its cycles. So again, as we could say also with openness and calmness, we could also relate that to silent illumination, the openness of awareness and the stillness or the calmness of not jumping in and responding. All right. So when we're at that place, as we're opening up in that way, then understand the natural unfoldment, the natural order of things. The order of things is not being interfered with. Or in other words, then we can really observe. Right? If I'm sitting in silent illumination, in calmness and openness, by which you might say I'm softening into everything. I'm not projecting, I'm allowing everything to speak to me or to reveal itself to me, then obviously then I can begin to really appreciate the order of nature, the cycles of nature, the natural balance and harmony, and learn and be instructed and directed by that rather than imposing on it. That includes, of course, it's not to say as human beings we're also creative individuals, and he also mentions a category of will in there. But our will, our creativity, our individuality is either going to be expressed in harmony with the nature of things or in disharmony and imbalance. And that leads to suffering for ourselves and leads to suffering, hardship to our bodies as well, and is likely to lead to suffering to others, we may have noticed. So yeah, I want to give you another example of understanding this balance of things, the alternating, what's the sense, the natural alternation of movement and stillness, vitality and spirit, active and passive, take over from one another. So I'll use that as an opportunity. I'll give you my own, it was really my own observation came up for me this last week or two, watching this process by which I've been sick. And I don't get sick like this. I don't catch things very often. So my first response usually is I don't really know what's happening. It's like I'm not aware, it's like, why am I feeling like this, And then the first thing I do is I blame it on myself. Why is my energy low? What am I doing wrong? What do I have to blah, 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 right? And I figure, I'm just going to buck up and get with it, And then I realize, no, that's not working. And finally I get it. Oh, I get it. I'm sick. It's not something I'm doing wrong. It's the nature of things at the moment. So then my ego's next response is, oh, I'm sick. Okay, I'll deal with this. I know what to do. So, I do all the right things naturopathically, nutritionally, herbally, and usually there's an immediate kind of response at some point. It's like things are like a little mellower, modified. Ah, there, you see, I got that one. All right, another day or two, I should be out the far end. And then I discover a day later that I'm feeling worse than ever. And I'm twice as congested, or suddenly there's an exhaustion that's taken over. Where did that come from? And then I realized that the several days of doing everything right, quote unquote, and that seemed to be on the right track, but now I've done doing it for several days, and I'm just worse. And I kind of have to accept the fact that I'm not in control of this with all of my cleverness. And of course, the other thing that's coming up then for me is, I want to do this, I got to do this, I've had this planned, all this kind of thing. And what happens if that doesn't happen? So all these projections of my mind around what I need to do, who I need to be, how I am, what needs to happen, and is trying to master and control the scenario of what's going on according to all my personal prejudices and constructs, right? And day by day, I have to let go of each one. I say, no, I can't control that, and I have my only choice is to just say, okay, that's how it is. What's being asked of me, you know? And you get to the point where, it's like, well, all I can do really is, as people always say, and even Chris, who's a great herbalist, said to me, hey, sometimes you just have to rest and drink fluids. That's all you can do. And I've had doctors say the same thing. At some point, that's really all you can do. And I said, wow, and I thought about rest and drinking fluids, and I thought, yeah, that's also flow and calmness and stillness. Just the flow to keep going in whatever way. Yes, keep the fluids going and relax and rest. And what I found myself doing, instead of coming up with my own ideas of how am I going to take care of this, because I used them all up, it was like just rest, drink fluids, and notice what my body wanted from moment to moment, right? And maybe what it wanted was just to lie down, which normally I never do. To lie down, to allow myself to feel really tired, right? To, take steam or a hot bath. It's like in terms of what I wanted to eat, clearly, there was nothing in me that wanted to eat certain kinds of foods, like anything that was mucus forming, the idea of it, whether it be dairy, whether it be even starch or bread, I just know. So my body knew what it wanted and what it wanted to do. And aside from that, I had to just trust my body and relax and let things take their course. So gradually, reality was teaching me, in this again, or reminding me to just relax and allow the natural order of things that, yeah, this is a moment for my stillness. This is a moment for my not being productive. This is my moment for not knowing what to do, etc., etc. And, when I accepted that, it was perfectly fine. It's just how long does it take us to get to that point, right? So I used that word intimacy earlier. It's another way of being intimate with our actual experience rather than telling our experience what it is. Intimate with the next breath, intimate with the next bit of exhaustion, intimate with the next emotional sensation rather than either avoiding it or being run by it. Just, okay. Yeah. Someone, I don't know if Chris was about to say something. So this is harmony and balance. Doesn't always look like what our egos think it should look like. It looks like the way things are, the natural order of things, and how to come into balance with that. Because a harmonious process, let's take some time with this last statement on this first page. A harmonious process of distillation sustains origination and production. In heaven, it distributes the myriad forms on earth. I'm sorry, I keep reading this wrong. In heaven, it distributes the myriad forms. On earth, it nurtures all living beings. And again, it's saying something about the continuity of this fundamental and creative activity and force, the work of the Tao. And I love again the word distillation, because again, it's the word distillation, just like the word culmination, is a little bit less of a dualistic word. I'm doing this to that. It's distilling out, or it's coming to its fullness, the culminating. So there's a process of distillation which sustains the continual you might say, creative origination and production, right? So it says in heaven. And by in heaven, it means at that stage of manifestation that we would call the one becoming two, right? What the Taoists call early heaven, where the Tao manifests, where Wu Ji manifests as in yin and yang. And as a result of that, everything becomes produced. So there's a creative process that's doing that. We could call it a caring process, not meaning to project human emotions on it, but rather to say that, just as many other traditions will say, whether it be Buddhism or Christianity, and really all religions kind of suggest that there's a fundamental caring or loving impulse. And it's not to anthropomorphize that impulse, is to say that we as human beings are the way we are because we're an expression of that. What we call love or caring or this or that is just the way we manifest. That's our word for it, but we're manifesting the nature of the universe, which is this embracing, active, the very same energy or phenomenon by which emptiness seems to generate, or emptiness generates everything, or infinity generates everything that's finite, is a generous and creative and loving process. And those people who have had some deeper inner experiences of that on a subtler and subtler level always seem to come away saying, yes, love, what we would call love, is at the basis of all of this. Whether it be the Christian mystics, whether it be the Buddhist understanding, and certainly I confirm that in my own experience. So there's and what Buddhism would call basic goodness or original goodness is the nature of everything, or the characteristic of everything. So that same process that is generous enough to create everything is also generous enough to see to its harmonious unfoldment, because it's part of the same harmonic process. It's part of the same process, creative process of balance and harmony. In early heaven, you might say it looks like the generation of forms, and in later heaven, which is manifest world, it takes the form of the caring for, the nurturing of forms. So when we relax in the Tao, just as in Western, tradition or theological tradition, say, trust in God, relax in God, it's the same, different words, but it's asking the same thing of us, right? To relax our self-centered projection and not just let it go, but to trust and to recognize that there's a bigger principle that by nature is wanting to unfold with some kind of harmony, and we're a part of that harmony. Right? But we have to sometimes pause and notice the seasons of the life cycle, because that's part of it. So this expresses itself on different levels of the manifestation. It may express itself as the harmony of the yin and yang and the creativity. But on earth, which is the realm in which that now has taken the form of having created everything, it continues through the science, you might say, of the balance of how to live our lives in balance on the earth. And a lot of Taoist wisdom, right, and Chinese wisdom also, of course, is a great teaching of balance, of how to bring the principles of yin and yang, and then the five elements, which is a secondary creation of yin and yang, but they become basic principles of balance that run through everything that we can observe. And so in terms of our physical health and well-being, right, the foundation of Chinese medicine is to understand that principle of balance as a natural extension you might say, of the beneficence of the Tao if we could only come into alignment with it. And on a psychic level, it's about just learning to relax, as we say, and be present and allow the nature of things to observe it more intimately in a more surrendered way, and with some silent illumination, and with some humility, which is all very related, so that we can make ourselves more in harmony with that innate harmony that's already there. Okay. So in this first page, he says, as I say, just in such a few sentences, he's distilled, as that beautiful word again, so much of spiritual, what could be a whole text of spiritual discourse, and they exist out there, into these few words without missing anything, I think. That's why I really appreciate this, and yet, and all with a certain sweetness and poetry to it. Let me pause. We're about to be done. I'll introduce the next thing we're going to get into, but let me pause first, just because it's good to do. And let's take a moment to practice or explore this idea of silent illumination. Which means, can we allow, which is related to soften into everything, but can we allow our minds to rest, our awareness to rest, in a place that where all that's happening we could say is the noticing of what is, but I like this word illumination because it gives our awareness an active, an intimate role in being there, in being almost the other half of all things. Things arise, they're in our awareness. Our awareness, also called mirror-like awareness sometimes. The awareness is becoming a wide open screen also, right? And you can imagine this lamp, the light of this lamp, and anything that passes before the lamp is simply illuminated. And that could be sensations in the body. It could be sensations from around us, or from the five senses. It can be emotional sensations. It can be feelings. It can be awareness of thoughts. There's not a distinction between internal and external, because that would be imposing our own idea. We're simply open to the field of awareness, because awareness is simply illuminating. It's actually a very subtle and hence difficult practice, really. Simple but difficult, because it's just asking the mind to not do what it normally does. But if you're doing this, if you're letting your awareness illuminate, simply include, if you notice that you're not doing it, that you're getting distracted, that you're da-da-da, don't dwell there. Just illuminate that. So that you're training yourself simply to illuminate. Even your lack of silence gets illuminated. Let your openness be complete and your stillness profound. And next time we'll explore this next thought, which continues with the sense of the evolution and unfoldment of everything. Forms all contribute to one another. Right? So just as we've said, not only does the movement of cycles of yin and yang, stillness and activity, they contribute to each other, but even seemingly solid forms, the idea that there's anything, again, this is basic Buddhist teaching too, that there's anything that's complete or separate unto itself is an illusion. Everything is an intimate composite of everything else that is not just going into making it causally, like that contributed to this, but in this moment, everything is participating in everything. Everything interdepends and is, as Thich Nhat Hanh would say. Buddhism says everything interdepends. Everything is in relationship and dependent on, a whole process of origination and creation and interaction. But in addition to that, I would say, things inter-are means that their very being or nature is not other than or different than the being and nature of everything else. So forms, and yet there is again this creative process of all these forms contributing to each other, and beings are immanent in one another. Okay, so that's the human equivalent of what we were just saying about things. We are immanent in each other. We are not separate beings. And again, Jesus was really being very technical when he said, love your neighbor as yourself. All right, there was a big clue going on there. All of this, of course, obviously, is the very, very, very opposite of what is going on in the world today and what has often gone on in the world. And that's the nature of our suffering and our crisis. And, we're undergoing a great malaise right now because sometimes we fantasize that things are getting better, then things are the way they are, and we go back to the basics. There's a great disharmony and a great deal of ignorance in our human existence, and we have to it challenges us to understand and to find our illuminating harmony, because that harmony is not based on how things are going out there at the level of conflict. Okay, but to understand the nature of conflict, to understand, to see into it, to have compassion, and then to see into and have compassion for our own despair when that comes up. Let action proceed from calm and be filled by maintaining openness. We're being asked to be open to all of this. Is really hard, huh? Everything in the world arises in being, and being arises in non-being. Being and non-being interpenetrate. So just as all things interpenetrate, you and I interpenetrate. Form and emptiness, so to speak, interpenetrate. Being and non-being also interpenetrate. It's going beyond all of the dualisms that the mind can possibly come up with. Concealing and revealing each other in mutual interdependence. Form and emptiness, being and non-being, conceal and reveal each other in mutual interdependence. So, let's take a final breath together. Send that breath out to the world. And the underlying harmony may find its way into expression. That the resistance to that the projections that we put on top of everything, projections of separation and conflict, can gradually be replaced with calmness and openness, 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 openness. May all beings be relieved of suffering and the causes of suffering. May all beings have happiness and the causes of happiness. And may all beings find freedom and ease of body and mind. And may we persist as love, persist as compassion, persist with wholeness and hope, even when all of the data around us challenge that. Okay. They're inviting us to keep coming back to the heart of what we are and to continue to offer it out there. Blessings. See you next week. And perhaps Saturday morning. Okay. Thank you all for coming so much.